Hello everyone and welcome into another video. I hope you're all having a great day. The Battlefield beta has come and gone, and with the huge fanfare and anticipation in the build-up that was tempered somewhat with the 1 month delay to release, this beta was the first chance that the general public got a feel for the game and got hands-on with what was reportedly a 2-month-old build. Some content creators were reporting that a behind closed doors experience early on in the week of the beta's release seemed to suggest that they may not be playing the exact same build that was released to the general public. Now, before we get into the good and the bad, keep in mind that this is a beta, potentially from up to 2 months ago as reported. So the feedback, concerns and grievances I have with this game should be given in the knowledge that there is time to fix things. And in my opinion, a lot of what does need fixing is perfectly doable in the next month before release. So, let's get into it. I was expecting performance issues with this game, but to my surprise the game actually ran quite smoothly for the most part. Whilst the game did suffer from occasional stutters, and they did tend to be quite severe in times, but they were very short-lived. Otherwise it seemed to hold pretty solid at around 80 to 100 FPS for me on medium settings, and when I whacked it right up to the max it did drop towards around the 60 mark, but I didn't want to sacrifice that amount of FPS for this experience, so I played the vast majority of this beta on medium settings. For reference, I have an i9 9900K, an RTX 2070 Super, and 16GB of RAM. So not a top-end machine in today's world, but a machine that should be able to consistently get high frames from AAA shooters. This is Battlefield like you have never seen it before in terms of scale. The beta map is huge, yet not the biggest that we're going to see in the game. There's not a great deal of cover on this particular map, especially in the large areas, even around capture points, which makes moving from point to point quite treacherous as it often leaves you very open and vulnerable to enemy fire. This is particularly of concern, and it is a particular issue when you consider how very easy it is to be obliterated by choppers and planes. This is reportedly one of the smaller maps, but 128 players is a good number here, I feel. Battles on the map at the points, and the capture points I mean, only rarely felt overpopulated and condensed. There was enough spread that you could have intense firefights at locations everywhere around the map without feeling that the entire server was there. I am slightly concerned though that with 128 players there will be a lot of dead areas on the map and a huge focus on vehicles to move around the larger maps on release. As an example of the sort of size referred to, if you haven't seen the images from some of the game reveals, one map is going to be 4 times the size of Hamada from Battlefield 5. That is large. Games always want bigger, better, and I think we could be very close to the ceiling with current limitations on player numbers with the hardware that we have commercially available. The trade-off between having huge player counts and map design and gameplay is a very fine balance, so Battlefield is going to have to tread very carefully along this line, otherwise certain maps will end up being totally ignored by players when it gets released. Movement wise it felt pretty slick. It feels like a blend of Apex and Warzone with the speed, the sliding and the sharpness. But this was one of my concerns. When we were watching the game footage in the build up to the beta, it felt very COD-like to me, or it certainly looked that way. But I think with the maps of the size that we're going to see in this game, you can't have slow movement, as that will make getting between points incredibly tedious. Let's talk about the HUD, which is arguably the thing that needs the most work in the game. In my view, it is really poor. The font sizing is all over the place, the colouring is weird, and the game-wide messages that appear in the huge bar at the top is incredibly distracting at times. And I'm not even going to talk about the monstrosity that is the tab menu, with the eyesore of colours and huge amounts of information in odd shapes, sizes and locations. Grenade icons are completely missing, so if a grenade lands on your toes or in your pocket, you're never going to know, you're just going to die, and it makes for some very frustrating deaths. The compass only appears when you ADS. I mean, you get the point. It's incredibly unfinished. Some of the colouring, the glow on the text, the blur and the distortion and screen shake, this has led to people reportedly getting migraines and headaches playing this game. One way people have been overcoming this is by changing the colour mode to ease the strain on the eyes, but you really shouldn't have to go to this length to avoid such a thing. To me, it just all feels like it's just random, almost like multiple people have been involved in the design of this and then just all launched it together at the same time. The text, the colouring, the sizes, perhaps it's a placeholder. Maybe that's one way to look at it. Perhaps there is a fully finished version of this HUD that's going to come out and release, but they didn't, for whatever reason, use it in this beta, so they gave us all these placeholder images. Let's hope that's the case anyway. One personal gripe, there is a disappointingly small amount of fanfare around ribbons, achievements, rank ups and kills and all the other things that happen during the game. It feels like this has been really toned down since the last Battlefield game. Maybe in an effort to keep clutter off the screen, I'm not sure, but the sensation of getting a kill is really important in a game like this. With Battlefield 5, when you clocked a headshot or you nailed a really good shot from distance or whatever it might be, you got this sense of reward, you got this skull icon appear, you got all these bonus points that came up for the length of your kill, whether it was a headshot. You get none of that here. It's just a very small skull and a name, and that's all you see. Another thing is that when you're dying, there's no notification of nearby medics. This was a feature that I really liked about Battlefield 5, where if you died, and if there was a medic within, say, 30 or 40 metres, it would tell you so that you knew not to go and bleed out quickly and respawn. Instead, you could wait and hope that the medic would do their job and come to the rescue. This is a feature I'd really like to see return. Unsurprisingly, there is a decent amount of balancing that needs to happen here. Choppers in particular feel incredibly overpowered. Their rockets and countermeasures seem to recharge incredibly quickly, meaning it's going to take more than one person to take down a chopper with Stinger missiles because of the slow reload on them that seems to take longer than the time it takes for the chopper flares to go through their cooldown timer. There is also another issue that runs alongside this, and that is the amount of ammo in the game. You start with a very low amount of ammo, even less than you did in Battlefield 5, and with no ammo refill stations like in the aforementioned Battlefield 5 game, it means you are totally reliant on teammates or picking up ammo from killed enemies. The latter is risky because of the lack of cover in the game, and if you have to break it, there's a good chance you're going to get killed, but unless you're with a team that's fully coordinated, I don't think anyone's going to bring in an ammo crate. The reason for this is the fact that you have to choose between taking the ammo box or bringing an RPG into the game, and with those pesky helicopters raining down their fury with ease, requiring multiple rockets from potentially multiple people, it feels like you have to take the RPG or the Stinger to counter the meta here. So some balancing and tweaking needs to be done around this. Either give us more ammo, nerf the choppers, or maybe have the ammo boxes say a class perk rather than an item that you have to bring in, or all of the above. Add on top of that the specialist classes do seem to encourage solo playstyles. Outside of the spawning on teammates, I rarely saw any of my teammates staying close or engaging and helping with things. This happened a little bit in Battlefield 5 where you'd have things like repairing tanks that wouldn't happen, but in here it seems to be a lot more prevalent. Well, I'm unsure if this is because of that specialist system, but equally I'm not even sure it needs to be in the game. I feel like this just adds another layer of complexity and choices that wasn't really needed. Another way to look at it is that this is also another level of work that DICE have put on themselves here, from a balancing perspective. Depending on where they go with these specialists, if they start bringing out new ones with OP abilities that breaks or creates a new meta, then DICE are going to cop some stick here because they're going to be the ones that are going to have to fix it. Before, the tried and tested formula of the previous class systems with the associated weapons that you could only use for that class seemed to work fine, so I don't really see why they added this in. Think of the negativity that Apex get whenever they release a legend that has an OP ability such as Seer or more recently Rampart. In Apex the abilities are part of the game's design and the game feels like it needs them. I just don't feel like that's the case with Battlefield. Overall, it feels like there is a ton of little bugs and things to improve here. Some of the bigger ones I've noticed were things like the parachutes that seem to hang around in the air for several seconds after you've landed, making it incredibly easy to spot enemies. Collision detection is also a bit of an issue. Look at this clip here where a chopper just slams into this building, gets stuck, and then keeps firing at me and doesn't explode. And teammate Retro has to come along and finish the job. The general feeling around this game is that it has been super rough. I think that does come from all these tiny bugs being pulled together into a collective thought or impression of the game. I don't feel like there is any really game-breaking bugs that can't be fixed fairly quickly, but when you list them all out, it does start to make the game sound rather unfinished. It is, however, important to know that there is also a ton of great things about this beta. The gunplay is outstanding in my opinion, and of course some balancing is needed, but the overall feel of the guns was great. The recoil was harsh at times on certain weapons, but predictable, and I'm happy to report that the in-game attachment wheel menu is really good and allows you to seamlessly switch attachments on the fly. The only two caveats to that is that in the beta it didn't save your attachment builds between deaths all that often, so you had to keep repeating them, and also there wasn't a huge amount of attachments for each gun. It is very conceivable that on release there'll be more attachments and that each gun will have far more of them to pick from. So by adding even half a dozen more, it might actually make this wheel become much more of a chore and quite hard to read, work out and kind of decide what attachments you want to take because you spend forever reading and flicking through them all. To summarise then on this beta, it's a very mixed bag that leaves me with quite a 50-50 viewpoint. On the one hand, this is Battlefield, a franchise that I have loved since the original Bad Company. For many of you, I'm sure the love goes beyond that, back to maybe Battlefield 2 days. So because of that, and the fact that I did have fun in this beta, I am still quite hyped for this. But then I think of the plethora of bugs, the tweaks, the balancing, the UI improvements, the graphical glitches that all need to be fixed. It leaves me wondering what state the game will be in on release. This beta, being 2 months old, has at least shown us that the delay was a good idea. However, the question now is whether or not that 1 month delay is actually going to be enough. You would often go on a rampage of kills for a few minutes and then be left thinking, okay, yeah, this is amazing, this is brilliant. And then you'll get drilled by a chopper who's getting his rocket cooldowns back insanely quickly, or the attachments on your gun don't work, or suddenly the game won't let you ADS, and it leaves you scratching your head and questioning whether the enjoyment is trumping the issues that you're seeing. With around a month to go until the release, I do get the feeling that the overriding feeling amongst players is one of hope rather than fear. There is a really solid shooter underneath all these issues, and if they can really ram home on those good points and fix the majority of those issues, then this has all the makings of being an amazing game. Let's also not forget that, strangely, we still don't really have any concrete information on the Hazard Zone mode, unless I've missed it. And we all know that it's meant to be some kind of hybrid extraction, high risk, high reward mode that combines elements of games like Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov, but that's all we know. We have no other information to go on. Nor have we seen much of Portal either, the game mode where you can mix and match weapons and factions from previous games on custom modes in old school maps that can all be created by the player. This alone can create an almost infinite amount of replayability for this game. So despite not hearing much about it and almost nothing about Hazard Zone, which perhaps could be cause for concern as to why we haven't actually heard anything, plus we've only seen one map in this beta, so there is still plenty of reason to get excited about the large amount of content that's coming to Battlefield 2042. This game has been a long time in the making, and it does feel like EA and DICE are throwing a huge amount of effort and resources at this project. So here's hoping that when it does drop, that it is everything that we hoped for. Thank you very much for listening to my impressions of the Battlefield 2042 beta. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do leave a like and subscribe down below, and hit that comment as well. Let me know what you guys thought of the beta. Are you still hyped for release? Do you still plan on getting the game, or has this beta really put you off? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.